Alright, so let's start class. This is, I was going to say it's Wednesday, but it's Monday. It's Monday again, so it's time for Android. And what you're looking at is a book, but it's hard to see it because I've got it zoomed in kind of far here. So what you want to do is you go, if you want to follow along, and you're going to want to because this is your final exam review. I'm going to start it today. We're actually doing 3 things at once. We're doing final exam review, capstone project, and finishing up a bunch of tutorials all in one. And I'm going to do something different this time, actually. I'm following this book. It's called Android Book Tutorials. This is how I've got it labeled on the bhacker.com website. If you download it, it's a PDF file. If you take a look at it, it comes from a Commons, here, it's actually at the bottom here, Commonsware. Mark Murphy actually put this thing together, and it's an old version. It's available for free, but it's an old version. I'm using it for the topics. So you can, it's based on Android 2.3, which is kind of old. There's a newer version of it out. The newer version has a price to it. This version is available for free, open source. Actually, this is not a bad location. Actually, if you go to Commonsware for $49 or $99, you can get a whole year access to as many PDF books as you want. Actually, it's a pretty good deal. Actually, some of them are free. Some of them you pay $49 a year. You can get like anything you want. This is an old book, but I sort of like it only because of the topics. So what I'm gonna do? It's a nice, easy read too. So what I'll do is I'll do the tutorials on 4.x or whatever. I'm going to still use my 2.3 emulator because it works best. But you can use this tutorial that we're going to go through, you can use any version of the SDK that you want. And I'm going to run through about 447 pages of this book within the next 3 weeks, probably maybe 2 weeks, see how far we get through it. But I'm going to give it to you at the speed of light, cut through all this stuff, and maybe modify the tutorials a little bit, make them more interesting, add a few more things to them. We'll see what happens with it. But I'm just kind of using this like sort of visual aid for reading for you guys. So if you guys can't follow along, then you download and you download the book. Actually, download the book anyway because then you can cut and paste from the book. But I'm not going to read you 447 pages of this book. Rather, I'm using this kind of like as a topic or as theme for the tutorials we're going to run through. We're going to build one huge capstone sort of restaurant app, which is very similar to assignment number 5. You can use pieces of this for your assignment number 5. Basically, after the next 4 weeks, we only have 4 weeks of class left. This is one of them. You'll have your final exam review. You'll have as many apps. If you can't do the assignments, there's something wrong with you. No, seriously, because we're going to do them now, pretty much. I mean, we're going to, if you can't, especially number 5, which is the restaurant app, then there's got to be something wrong with something. There's some disconnect. Because you should be able to get all the assignments done within the next 4 weeks as well. If you hadn't even started on them yet, just after today you could probably get them all done. Because they're easier than what we're going to do today, or what we're going to start doing. So as I go through this, I'm going to give you, and I shouldn't say there's something wrong with you, it just might mean you need more practice with it. Take back that unpolitically correct, there's something wrong with you comment. So I shouldn't be telling my students that there's something wrong with them. Anyway, so even the solution code is available for this, but I'm not encouraging you to download it because it's written for 2.3 API, and it's done in very old Android version. And even the book talks about pre-Eclipse compilation and stuff like that. So I'll give you the updated version of this, but this is kind of like the game plan. So, and also this is our final exam review. So the final exam is going to be 25 to 30 multiple choice questions based upon the material I'm going to give you from today all the way to the next 4 weeks, which is everything we've covered in the course. So this is sort of the capstone project / review, if that makes any sense. All right, if you have the book downloaded, hopefully you've done that while I've been talking here, then open up the table of contents, which is on the left-hand side. What we're going to do is skip, well, we'll do it all. We skip the first chapter, though, because you guys are already familiar with that stuff. And we're going to go to the simple form that starts, it's really called Tutorial 2. This is like a 10-minute tutorial, really. And if this pace is too fast for you, the pace is built upon the concept that you probably have already built an app before. if you're brand new to this and you haven't been attending the class and you're totally behind in the learning curve, then definitely take this at a slower pace, and you have the resources at least to do that right now. So, all right, so, and you notice it says, you know, outside of Eclipse. There's a lot of stuff in this book that's kind of made a little bit too manual. So I'll definitely show you the automated version of everything. So let's start out by making a new app, and the theme of this is going to be a restaurant app, but it's going to turn into a restaurant app after going through a bunch of different stages. The first stage of it is basically, well, here we got it. It's called the lunch list. So instead of restaurant, it's going to be called lunch list. We can call it anything we want to call it. I'm going to just basically start out by calling it something. So I'm just going to, so now we're going to start. Open up Eclipse. And let's all just create a brand new project, and I'm going to call it last app. I'm going to do last app, because this really, it's going to take us 4 weeks to write this thing. Well, this is last one of 2, because there's 2 parts. So, and the reason why we're starting back at the beginning is because, well, I'm reviewing what you want to know, but also at the same token, you have to go back at the beginning in order to get the later parts of it. So to add the database stuff in, and it's going to require us to have this app sort of built. So we're going to just take it from the beginning. So File, New, Android Application Project, and I'm going to call mine Last App. Call yours anything you want to call it. It's really going to be, the final product is really going to be a restaurant. So you can call it, you know, my restaurant or restaurant app or something. Or maybe I'll change that. Maybe I'll call it restaurant. That would require me to know how to spell restaurant. R-E-S-T-A-U-R-A-N-T. Is that? Did I spell that right? Rest. Restaurant. That's correct? You guys told me it wasn't correct. Where do you see T-A? Right here? T-A? Tarrant?
Yeah, that's total.
All right. Now that we got that out of the way. All right. Spelling English is my first language. All right, go next. You know how to create an app. So, okay, so the multiple choice questions, and because I am doing my final exam review here, the components of an app. Now, I'm not going to ask you, what are the steps involved in creating an app? But you're going to want to know that you're creating an app, and the app kind of like what, you know, like it has a source code folder. The questions are going to be phrased so that if you've built an app before, you'll know what I'm talking about. You don't have to go through and memorize the different parts of an Android app, but you want to be familiar with the Android tools as a general kind of basis here. All right, and you know, we're using Eclipse, by the way, and this is done in Java. This is a basic app that I've created. All right, so if we're going to build the kind of the main, this is a simple form. This is the first one. We could actually skip this one, but we're just going to do it anyway to orient you. You want to know the different parts. As an example, main.xml. In here, it's called main.xml. This is a very old tutorial. Ours is called activity_main.xml. So know that the UI interface is done in XML. So that's an XML interface, and that the source code is written in Java. So again, I'm reviewing for the final exam. So those are some of the things you're going to want to know. So one of the other things, too, I'll just tell you about here is that the older API versions had you put this encoding at the top. It's no longer required. So as a mental note, if you could remember, as we go through, and if we cut and paste from this tutorial, and we go back to the XML interface here, we notice that on the XML interface, we don't have that little line at the top. So one of the first things we'll want to do here is just make note that we don't have to worry about this XML, but we're working with an XML file. So, and then here we've got this linear layout, and then we're going to use this linear layout, but keeping in mind that we have different types of layouts: linear layout, relative layout, grid view layout. So knowing that there's different types of layouts, and the layout in the XML file is outlining what kind of visual appearance we're going to get in terms of the word wrapping and the component placement of the pieces when we run this app. So the default is actually in the old API, and you don't have to know the default for the final You don't really need to know it at all. It used to be relative, excuse me, it used to be linear. Now it's relative layout, actually. But you don't actually have to know that. Just be familiar with some of the different types of layouts. So if I said a relative layout is used, or linear, or some of the layouts that are used for the user interface design are relative, linear, and grid view, or grid, or something. And true or false? And the answer would be true. Those are some of the layouts. So that's kind of, I mean, it's kind of no-brainer, hopefully, kind of questioning. And I'm not going to put something in there that's weird. You know, that's not like a common layout. We have some odd layouts that you could possibly create that would, you know, be different. But anyway, in the linear layout, this is going to want us to add, well, we don't necessarily have to do this, but this interface here, if we wanted to, the simple form, says to change, if we're going to follow through this tutorial on page 12, it starts out. The problem with this tutorial, and the reason why I don't normally follow tutorials from books, is that we have this problem where we're screen wrapping from one page to another. I'm actually going to follow along here and just do what's in here. So I'm going to copy and paste everything except for this top line, because remember I said that's the old format. In the newer project types, we don't have to worry about that. So if I take out everything that's in my layout and I start out putting this piece in here, I'm going to actually paste in what's underneath it from the next page. So this is what I was trying to say. It's kind of goes off into multiple pages. So, you know, one of those things coming out of a book. It's kind of... But if I put that layout in here, the layout in here has got, and this is the XML interface as we've seen before, we got a text view in here. So you want to be familiar with some of the components of the layouts. As an example, the text view and the edit text. Now I'm not going to ask you, what's the label called? A text view, you know. No, instead you'll see like a text view, and I'm not going to ask you all the different properties and things about that, but know that you have these components, and they're all widgets. Well, they're all views, actually. They all come from the view hierarchy. Remember the view lecture that I gave you? And here we have the different components that are inside of the opening and the closing layout that we have defined for our particular interface. And notice that here I've got a layout inside of a layout. So we can nest layouts, we can nest the view components. And these are all nested view components, by the way, the text view and the edit text. And if I take a look at this to see what I created so far with this restaurant app, and I just run it, I've got my emulator loaded up in the background here. The first part of my app, whoops, let's see. Oh, I have to go select it here. And of course the screen goes away. Is just the two components with the text view and then the edit text. So I can put a name in here and an address down here, and I have a save button. And I've filled the parent, so I've expanded from the left to the right. So just knowing that it is, see where it says filled parent and wrap parent? Filled parent, wrap parent, essentially the height and the width. It actually, fill and wrap pretty much do the same thing. It fills it from corner to corner. Okie dokie. So it gives you a 3-row form. We just looked at it a few minutes ago. One of the rows is labeled for the field of the restaurant name. The other one is for the address. And then we have a save button. So if we compile and install the app, we don't have to run through these instructions, so I'm going to skip through it. You'll see something like that. I just showed you a few minutes ago what it looked like on my interface. So something as basic as the layout, and knowing that it is a layout, actually, and it's part of the resource folder, and it becomes part of r.java as well. So we also have this concept of model view controller that works. And the book's not going to go into it, but I will definitely comment on it right now because that's what we're going to build. We're going to build a model view controller design. It's called a design pattern. And it's not quite clear when you start looking at Android projects, but it is there. It's more clear with an iOS project. But I'm going to close this activity here, close main, and know that inside of the resource folder, these are generally our view components, our resources. So inside a layout is where we found the main activity or activity main. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to quiz you on what. I'm not going to ask you questions about what things are called. It's the concept that this would be a view. And the controller for the view is our activities. So remember at the beginning of the course I went through the different types of app types. Here we're extending from activity. If I open it up, main activity, let's say it extends activity as an object. The activity is the controller for the view, and each activity is usually assigned to a particular view. And then we have the data model. And so we haven't worked very much with this, which is why I want to do this now, actually. We can create another class, add it to the app, use it strictly as the model. Or they call it a model and model view controller. It's really the data. In our case, it's going to be restaurant information. So if we go back now to the PDF file here, we're going to create the model class. Now the model class in this particular case is going to be called restaurant.java. So let's go ahead and what I'm also going to do is review a little bit of Java for you. There are no Java related questions on the final exam. It's primarily on Android because this is an Android class. However, if you really want to get into this, you need to take a Java class if you don't know Java already. So let's go ahead and add the model to this so we have all three components working for us. So go ahead and click on the package for the source. Right underneath the source directory they have the package name. File, new, and then we're going to create class. And this class is going to be called restaurant with a capital R. Restaurant. Well, there is an A in there. Yeah, you're right. I think I misspelled it again. Restaurant. Did I spell that right? Yeah. Restaurant. Okay, perfect. And go ahead and press finish. Classes in Java, you don't necessarily need to know this, but they always start with a capital letter. And we know that we have the package that's already automatically put at the top of the Java file, and that's going to tell us it belongs in the same package information that we have in main activity. So if main activity is the view controller, then restaurant.java is going to be the model, or the data model. So what we're going to add in here, we can actually just cut and paste it from here. And this goes back to Java programming, and I'll go over this in a few minutes. For those of you who have had a Java class, you're going to know, I'm sorry? What's wrong? Okay. You're going to recognize some of these parts. I'm just going to briefly cover just because some of you haven't taken the Java class yet, but we have two data members in here, name and address, and they're private because they're not going to be accessible by the main view controller. Instead, we're going to run the methods to get at this private data. And the methods are public because we're taking in, we're setting and getting information and retrieving, manipulating the data of the private class data. So public, get name, set address, set address, where we're essentially accessing through a public method the private data and changing values. So just like any Java course that you may have taken, we're going to use a Java data model. So there's our data model. So we could save it now, and we should have no errors at all. We should have restaurant.java over here. Now, in creating restaurant.java, we can make an instance of it. This is how we're going to get through 400 pages. We're already on page 48 because I'm skipping through most of the tutorial. Just give you the brief version of this. If you want the slower, read through all the text. But let's make an instance of this, and we're going to stick this instance in the main activity class. So if we separate the data and we put it out here, we have restaurant.java. In main activity, right underneath, and I like to stick things underneath to set the context view. Setting the context view sets us to the main, actually we're going to stick it right here, but that's the method. Let me back up a little bit. I'm not adding to Uncreate, I'm sorry. I always start out with Uncreate. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to stick it right underneath public class main activity extends activity. What I'm pasting in here is creating an instance of the restaurant class we just created. So I have restaurant R is equal to new restaurant. If you're from the Java class, we just made a new instance of an object. We called it R for restaurant. You can call it anything you want. You can actually put spaces in here too if you wanted to. The reason why we're doing this is because we want to use the data model inside of the view controller. And so the data model is going to be responsible for storing the name and the address of the restaurants that we're going to keep in here. So if I make a new instance of the model, that's how I'm connecting the files together. So what we really want to do is separate out the data into the separate class modules or models, and then keep the view controllers so that there's one controller for each one of the XML files. But we can make exceptions to this when it becomes necessary. It's like not like a rule, actually. You can do anything you want with that. Now for the Oncreate, we're going to get the button that we stuck out there, and on the button we're going to save. We're gonna put a button listener. Now we've seen button listeners, and so I'm going to review that concept in a second here. But what we want to do is make an instance of the button that we're going to get. So part of the methodology here in creating the connections between the view controller, the view, and the data is to have them all three work together. So now we're going to go into Oncreate. So if we remember from the life cycle of the app, Oncreate is the first one after OnStart. Oncreate, we're going to actually create. On the start, we're going to Oncreate the app itself. If we're going to do that, then we're going to set the context view. I just pasted this actually from the book example a few minutes ago. If we set the context view to the activity, then we have a button that we're going to create, and don't worry about the red lines right now. And we're going to call the button save, and the button's going to be equal to cast it to. This is a cast where we're going to cast this type that's going to be returned to a button type, so we can add it to a button. We're going to use a find view by ID. So something like find view by ID is a method you do want to be familiar with. That's the method that allows you to extract out of r.java, which is the resource file, information by IDs. And the ID that we're going to extract out is called save. And we get save from activity_main. And in here we've called the button, down here on the bottom where it says button, we called it save. So this at plus ID is the at directive tells the compiler, hey, I want to do something. What do I want to do? I want to add, which is the plus, to the ID, save. And this is kind of the switch that tells us that we're going to insert the word save in as an ID in the r.java file. So that you do want to be familiar with, because what you're going to do, the way that we get things out is, remember all classes start with a capital letter. R.java is really short for resource. R stands for resource. It's the resource compilation of all the XML files that get turned into Java code by the compiler automatically. You don't do it well, in this particular, actually, it doesn't matter if you're using Eclipse or not. The compiler will assemble that for you, given the instructions that are built into the project type. Okay, so I'm gonna hover my mouse over. I'm gonna import button here to fix it. Button comes from Android Widget. Widgets are components. A widget could be a view component, but they're coming from the package, the widget package up here. If we take a look, we have widget button, and now we're gonna have widget text field in a few minutes as well. On here, we've got an interesting. Well, I haven't put the listener in here yet. So this next line of code we're going to leave alone for a second, because on save, which is this button here, save, we're setting the onClick listener, and the onClick listener that we're setting is called onSave. So in the code sample here, we have another method down here, and I'm going to copy and paste and put this method in my example here as well. And I'm sticking it right underneath, actually. And this is a view onClick listener, and the onClick listener is called onSave. So if I hover my mouse over, because I want to get rid of the red stuff right now. Hold on one second. Let me just clean this up a little bit. And that looks pretty clean. So I'm going to hover my mouse over import view, get view in there, and then get the edit text in there too. That's the no-brainer. Okay, good. And then, let's see, remove invalid modifiers. Well, let's just take a look here. Let's just take a look here. Oh, probably because I forgot to put the closing bracket here, of course. There we go. And take this closing bracket away. Let's just take a look here. 1, 2, closing bracket at the end of that. Very good. All right, so what you're looking at, if you remember the lecture I gave you on listeners, there's 3 or 4 different ways of doing it. Actually, there's 3 different ways of doing this legitimately. There's a 4th way of doing it where you're just adding the name of the function or the method to the XML file and you're just not using a listener at all. You can use a named internal class. You can use an external class. You can use a listener or you can not use a listener. There's a couple of different ways of doing this. So what we've done here is instead of importing view, we're just running view.onClickListener, which is pretty much doing the same thing. I ended up importing it anyway. Actually, I didn't import onClickListener. I just imported view menu and view. So we're going to call the view the onClickListener onSave, and it's going to be equal to a new view onClickListener, which we created it all in one shot. So this is an unnamed inner class where we've created a method to attach a listener to a button without putting it into a separate class, without putting it into a separate method. We actually included it inside of the method that we were working with, and inside of the class that we were working with. And the class that we were working with is the main activity. So we have a couple of items that we click to the onClick, and the onClick is the on a click. That is the event that we're listening for that's going to be attached to the button, because we have the save onClickListener is going to be equal to, and the save is the name of our button, onSave. And the onSave, which is just going to create a new click listener for us, is on the click. We're going to take the edit text and we're going to copy whatever's in there, that's the name, to our name variable, and then we're going to take the name variable from the the address from edit text, and we'll put it into address, and then we're going to go and we're going to run from our set name and set address, which is from our data model. So we're taking and running the setters and the getters from here to set the data from the click listener that we got from the view. Hopefully some of you see all 3 pieces of the model view controller working together. We have the view, we have the controller, and we have the model all connected right now. That's what it means, actually. That's what the model view controller design pattern actually means, believe it or not. It's separating out the functionality into those 3 components. Question?
Yes, your model will be the star.
The model is the data. So if you want to think of it as data model, that might be an easier way of remembering it, but the model is the data. The data is restaurant. Restaurant was the data type that R is. So yes, to answer your question, yes. Restaurant R, the instance of the data model is R. And this is where we're setting R set name and set address. This is how we're using the model with the data that's being received from the view through the controller. So the view has the components on it. The controller is taking the component data that's out there on that view and giving it to the model by using set name and set address on R. R is the model. Important concept actually just for programming in general. Works the same way with iOS actually as well. So it's not bad to be familiar with that concept. Now if we run it, it should work. The only problem is we're not really going to see anything because all we're doing, this is only part 1. But we should run it. We shouldn't get any error messages at this point. Looks pretty good to me. But I'm not doing anything with it. But I'm saving it. I'm not really showing you anything about it. So the code itself, runnable, workable. So let's make a fancier form. We're going to add more components to the form. So keep your, this is an evolving app, by the way. So keep it and keep adding to the same one. We're going to take away that layout that we just had a few minutes ago. Now we're going to put a table layout in there. Eventually we're going to put tabs in there, and we're going to store data in there, and we're going to do a bunch of other stuff with it. So it definitely evolves. So switch to the table layout now. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, the easiest way to do it would be to cut and paste and put this code into the XML file. So if you want to, what you could do, you don't necessarily have to. I'm going to continue on the same lines that I'm on right now. You could close this one, create a new app if you wanted to. I'm just going to extend this one, which means I'm not going to have any history. If you want the history of it, you can download a zip file that has all of these different ones in it if you want. The only problem is they're made for a very old API. Still works in Eclipse, it's just very old. So anyway, so I'm going to go to my view controller here, and I'm going to take out, my view controller, excuse me, my view, my activity_main.xml file, and remove everything in it. I'm going to update this one here now. And I'm going to stick the table view in here. Don't put this top line in, as I was mentioning before, it's for the older API. So the tutorial works on the current version. This is just made for a very old interface. It's a two-boxer here that continues on to the next page, so go ahead and put both parts in if you want to see this work. And that's what I'm doing right now, actually. So we saw the table view. It's different from the linear, different from the relative. It puts things in quadrants or rows, table rows. So we have one table row here that's going to have our name in it, and then we have another table row that's going to have our address in it. Same interface as we had before. And then we have a table row that's got our button in it on the bottom. So if we run it, the interesting thing is we'll notice that it's going to look the same, pretty much. And if we kept code the same as the tutorial, what we're also going to notice is that it runs just fine as well. And it works just fine. So the functionality should work. It's the same app as we had before. The only thing different right now is this is a table view, but we can't really tell. So your view isn't really going to, depending upon what widgets you put on there and what order, is going to really determine how things show up. Alright, so we notice that we replaced the 3 linear layout containers into 2 rows. Now this looks like something like that, which screenshot looks very similar to what I just showed you, but I'm on a tab. We all know about this error, because most of us have seen this error. It comes up occasionally out of nowhere. No, you haven't seen, you've never seen this error? I don't see it either, but I claim other people see this error all the time. What this error is telling you, and this is funny, the book actually included a little bit on this, which is actually kind of funny. It tells you on the bottom, if you've encountered this error, do a force clean on the project. What do I always tell you to do? Clean it. Actually, I tell you to throw the project away and recreate it. Because at some point, it gets so corrupted, and it's not you, it's Eclipse, or it's the SDK. It's documented right here. It's a project problem when you get this. Some of you may have gotten it right now just running this example. I find it happens when I've got too much running on the computer, actually. And I don't know, it's not memory related, it's corruption. So, and also you have to think, and you have to remember that that r.java file gets set automatically. And if I just did a few minutes ago, some people would have gotten the error message. Mine updated immediately, but sometimes it takes longer, depending upon how much RAM you've got on your computer, for it to update. And if it's out of sync, you're going to get this lovely little unexpected error that shows up. And you can't do anything about it. It's nothing you can fix. All you can do is clean the project or throw it away and start over again. Seriously. That's why I don't like Android. Alright, no, I like Android. Add a radio group. I like it now. When I turn the video off, I'm not going to like it. I'm just kidding. Alright, so I have to stay on positive and PC about Android. I'm teaching an Android class, for crying out loud. Hey, it's free! And it doesn't keep being updated. And I can run it without having put it in the Apple Store. Okay, add a radio button. So we're going to add a radio button now. And we're going to put one on the bottom of it. So actually what I'm going to do is, you know what, I'm just going to take this here. And I know I've got half of it in there already, but I'm just going to take this whole box and put it in there so I don't have to worry about cutting and pasting. And the good thing here is it appears to be cutting and pasting just fine versus my PDF files that don't cut and paste so well. This is working just great. So what we added was the same interface we had before, and we put a radio button in on the bottom. Because on the restaurant, is it going to be sit down or delivery? Those are our two options. So now if I run it, let's just run it now. I should have 2 radio buttons on the bottom now. Oh, I have 3, I'm sorry. Takeout. Is it going to be takeout, sit down, or delivery? And then I have to add the data next, because remember restaurant R that we created, our instance only has a name and address, so we have to add now a little, maybe a Boolean value or something for which option we're going to do. So naturally that's going to come up here. We added the radio button. Our interface looks like that now. And so now we're going to add a type. So the data is going to be called type. And we're going to have a get type and a set type. And we can add the methods first. This tutorial has you add the methods first, which is kind of interesting. So let's see. Copy them. Kind of come over. Now we're going to open up restaurant.java. I'm going to put the methods on the bottom actually. And the 2 methods I'm going to add are going to be a set and a get on the type, as well as a closing bracket here. Type's going to be in red because I don't have type yet. I have to add type as a data member. So this one's going to return type on our get type, and then it's going to set type. So this dot type is going to be equal to type. And if I take a look here at the top of it, type is going to be a string, so it's going to be a private string type. And this tutorial output here has got the whole finished file. You can, if you want to, you can just cut and paste the entire finished file if it's a little bit easier for you, or you can just manually do what I'm doing here. So I'm going to add another private string, and the type is string. Data type is string. The variable data type is called string. The name of the variable is type. Now my errors go away. Now some of you might be looking at this going, how come she's got, and it's not me, it's a different style author here, who's got type. This works too, actually. You don't have to put type inside of brackets. The old way of doing it, I shouldn't say old, it's a different programming style. Those people who have taken my Java class know that I don't do that. I do this instead. Most people, depends on where you learn programming. I don't like to return it like that because it's like a cast and I don't like the way that looks. You don't have to put it inside of opening and closing brackets. You can just return it. So I just changed mine to be more like my style. I don't actually always include this either, but in this particular case you have to, because if I'm setting name to name and I'm bringing in name from the parameter, I'm going to have a problem if I do this. Name is equal to name. It's ambiguous. Which name is equal to which name? So this I totally agree with, the use of this, which is optional again, but in this particular case I would have used n or something here, and then I went name is equal to n instead, but again it's another programming style, so don't really worry about that. But I took out the opening and the closing brackets around the return types because I don't like that. So now that we've added the type to our data model, and then we save it, and then we can change this here to get the type. So we need to change the controller to pick up this. So now we have it, but now save has to somehow pick it up and use it to save it to the data model that we've created. So on the onClick listener, we're going to change it so that we're going to add this on the bottom. So radio group types is going to equal to radio group find view by ID are dot types, and we called it types. Well, let's just take a look at that interface for a second here so we can refresh our memory on what we put in here. Here's our radio group, and our radio group's got 3 buttons on it. Make this a little bit bigger. The radio group, it's a grouping. It's a grouping because only one of the radio buttons can be selected at a time. If you notice when I was playing around with that interface, I had radio button 1, 2, 3, and then one of them moved and the other, the green little dot moves. Only one can be selected at a time because I put them in a radio group. So the radio group is going to tell me, well, what button is pressed, what button is enabled. So on here, I've set the text. This is, again, if you put your mouse over here, it's going to tell you it should have created a string. Yeah, we learned that already. We probably should have created a string for that, but we're just going to hard set it here. There are some people that don't like to use the strings, some people who do. I would have made a string out of that. But anyway, long story short, radio group types, that's the ID. And the ID here is takeout, sit down, or delivery for the buttons. So when we take and write the code to check that, we're going to switch, like a case switch you see in C++ or Java. Switch types.getCheckedRadio button. GetCheckedRadio button from the radio group is going to tell me which one of these buttons is checked. Is the ID, so r.id.sitDown. Then case, if that's the one that's checked, it's going to come back and say, if this is checked, it comes back with this. If the sit down is checked. And then otherwise we get the takeout that's checked. And so we can set the type, well the type's a string. We can set the type to sit down, takeout, or the last one here, delivery. So what we're doing is adding this to the on-click listener. So you could take the whole thing if you wanted to, or you can just take this second part here. I'm just going to cut the second part. Oops. Actually, I'm going to do it in 2 shots. Copy and paste the second part underneath where it says set address. So let me go back to my restaurant. Oops, not my restaurant. It's a main activity. So I'm going to close restaurant, close the activity, and save it. Go into main activity, go into the on-click listener. Underneath where we are setting r.setAddress, r.setName is r.setAddress is where we're going to put in the new code. And the new code is for the radio group to pick up the radio group type and then switch the type. Yeah, let me cut the rest of it in and then I'll format it. I think I'm going to have to pull out a couple of those. Yeah, there we go. All right. Let me hover my mouse over and add radio group to import radio group. And what's that sequence? Control F. There we go. Command Shift F to format it. There we go. Command Shift F did it, and now I have the. I've got the code stuck in here now, so that I can see that I'm going to switch types, and types is the name of my radio group, and radio group is types here. So from types.getCheckedRadio button, coming from r.types, r.id.types. If it's sit down, take out, or delivery, I'm going to set the text, so set type from R. So this is from the, still the same instance, so here up here, R. So now we have all 3 pieces of information. We have the name, we have the address, we have the type. And we're going to do, so now if we run it, it'll work just like we did before. Probably not, I bet. I did make sure we still have a running app. Otherwise I have to go back and fix something for the next part. But I should be having a run, this should be running. Yep. So now I can go and just type some stuff in here. There we go. No errors or anything. Pretty good running. So I have a fancier form now with a radio button. So let's see here. Importing, just to make sure I get everything complete. I do. Believe it or not, we've buzzed through about 3 chapters so far. Because I'm giving it a short list. So tutorial number 4, adding a list. So now what we're going to do is take and create tabs. This is what I call my capstone project. This is an accumulation. By the time we get done with this, we would have done everything that we have done so far in this course one more time, but it's all together in the same project. And the beauty of it is you can go back and look at the previous steps if you want to. Now we're going to add a list of restaurants because now, so far we don't see anything. We have our data, but we're not doing anything with it. So we're going to take it and we're going to put it into a list box. And we're going to put it on the screen so we can see. But we need a way of flipping back and forth between adding a restaurant in and looking at the ones that we have. So we're going to easily add a list to it. So we're going to hold a list of restaurants. And so we still have this line here, restaurant R is equal to new restaurant. So we're going to put that inside of the list. And this is using the abstract data type list, which is part of the container class of Java. This is a Java list, by the way. So it's going to be list. It's going to be called model. It's going to be equal to a new array list. And again, if you take the Java course and you look at the utility, it's in Java util, and it's part of the container classes. We have built-in linked lists and lists and sets and hashes and a bunch of data structures that are built in for us. Or if you're taking the data structures course right now, you're familiar with this already. So we're going to add a list component, and then we're going to save all the adds to the list as it goes. So in terms of what we need to do here, we're going to have a list of restaurants in the UI. So we need to list restaurants out. So utils change this one here. We're going to put this one in instead. So I'm going to copy this. And instead of restaurant r.java, restaurant r is equal to new restaurants, I'm going to put in the code. So I'm going to close this main activity. Oops, I want to keep main activity up. Instead of this line here, then I'm going to comment out. Underneath, and I'm going to create a list of restaurants instead of a single restaurant. And then I'm going to hover my mouse over list and include, remember from Java util, I've got list. So now I have Java util list in here. And hopefully this is demonstrating the close relationship we get between Java and Android. This is Java source code, by the way. And also import the array list as well. And if you didn't get your, so now I have Java util array list and Java util list that's in here. And there was a space. I could probably put the space back. The space is in here because this is core Java and this is Android SDK. So generally you put a space in between the different groups of where the imports are coming from, but you don't necessarily have to. But I figured I should probably show good practice and put that back in. So note that you need to import. We figured that out as well. So let's figure out how to save the adds to the list. So we need to change the on-click listener because remember before we were set the name and set the address, but we were setting it for R. Well, R is still up here, but we changed it now and it's going to be called model. So we have model to work with. So we need to add, we need to do is add a local variable R variable, and populate it, and then add it to the list. So now we're going to take this restaurant R, move it down into the on-click listener. Each one of the list items is going to contain an R, and an R is an instance of the restaurant object. So the list is actually holding restaurant objects. So we need to create a local R, populate it with the name, the address, and the type, and then it's called type. Take the R and put it into the list. And then eventually we're going to take the list and put it onto the display. So here if we do this, we don't have to change any of the code. So back up here, if I take this line here, I'm just gonna cut and paste it here. So now the main model is showing the array. I'm gonna put some spaces in here because I like that. I'm gonna come up here and at the beginning, you notice I have this red stuff now. R can't be resolved. Well, that problem is gonna go away as soon as I put this in here. So now I have a local R. R is going to be equal to new restaurant. So my other code now still works because I'm going to add everything in there. So let's see, once it's added in there, at this point we should be able to rebuild and reinstall the application, test it out, and make sure that clicking on the buttons does not cause any unexpected errors. But we still haven't added it to the list group yet. The saved button now just creates a new restaurant for us here. So it's doing it locally within the on-click listener. So we're going to need to, actually let's just test it now, make sure everything's working still. Everything should be working still. It's not a bad idea to test it when it's recommended because then if it breaks, I know where it broke. And we just came to the conclusion that it never breaks. Yeah, yes it does. Alright, so now my save button, okay, no errors, everything's working, so I did my due diligence. It's definitely been saved. Alright, so we've built it, we reinstalled it. When it says reinstall, it just means run it. When you run it in Eclipse, it actually reinstalls. In the old days, you actually had to install it in the emulator. Now you don't have to do that. It just does it automatically. So let's see. We're looking pretty good. So now we notice that we've not added the actual restaurant to anything. R is a local variable, and it's inside of the scope of the on-click listener, and on-click listener returns And now the address is a shortcoming later in the exercise. So we'll see the address. Because we don't have the address, it's not added to the list yet. So simplify the creation of the list view. We're going to create a list view to hold the list items. It's part of our list. We need to create our restaurant class. Make we respond intelligently to a toString. So we're going to overload, goes back to Java. We're going to overload the toString method so that we can print out the restaurant. And we put the contents of the restaurant, we're going to put it into the list view, which is easier than taking each one of the components. We're going to automate it by overloading the toString method. So it's called each time the restaurant is going to be displayed. For the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to use the same name. Later the tutorials will use different rows, but here we go. So we're going to add this to the implementation of the restaurant. If you're from the Java class, then, or if you've taken Java before, what we're doing is a simple overload of the toString method, which is what normally you would do in an object. Here's the restaurant object. To open up restaurant.java, I'm going to stick it on the bottom and paste. So when we print out a restaurant, we said, I was going to say C out, system out. Now I'm thinking C++ for some strange reason momentarily. System out.println R in this particular case, or R, whatever it is. Actually, it's going to be R. It's going to run this overloaded method. Again, this overloaded method is going to return getName. GetName returns, and people don't like this. Why do that? Well, I would have just returned name. But this is returning getName. I'm going to leave it alone because maybe there's a reason. Probably not. But this goes back to programming style again. If I'm going to return something from a toString, why am I going to call a method call on a return? That's my thought on it. I don't know. I'm the type of person that would just put name here, just like getName, which is going to be returning name. However, we'll just leave it alone. We'll humor the author who created this. So somebody else's style, getName. They both accomplish the same thing. My style, that's not my style. My style, I just put in name. And then I took out the opening and closing brackets as well, because that I can't deal with. So, all right, so then we added, recompile, ensure your application still builds. I'm pretty confident that it's going to build. I'm not going to rerun it again. But now we're going to add the list view widget. So we're going to have a list view. And we're going to put it onto the to the view. So it becomes a challenging part adding the list view to the layout. The challenge is getting it to lay out right. So we have only one screen to work with, and we need to somehow squeeze the list into it by eliminating the space and anything else associated with it. One way of doing it is through the relative layout. Well, that's what we have right now as the overarching layout, and then anchor details on the bottom of the screen. We could do that. So to make this change, we're going to replace the main.xml file, or main activity_main.xml, to add to the bottom of it the list view. See, we see the list view. In fact, you can just take this here and put it to the bottom, or you can cut and paste the entire relative layout and put it back into the other one. But what we're really doing is just adding to the bottom this list view, because we haven't put the grid, we haven't put the tabs in yet. I'm going to save the tabs for the next thing, but if we wanted to see how the behavior works, save your restaurant, open up main activity, or activity_main. Underneath, let's just make sure I've got the same thing. Underneath the table layout, oh, I don't have it inside of a relative layout. All right, I'm just going to take the whole thing so it matches. They stuck the table. I didn't put the table layout on the outside, so I'm going to do it the way they're doing it. So the relative layout is the outer, table layout's the inner. Let's just, as long as yours is working, it doesn't really matter what we're doing. But the big change at the end is to add the list view. The list view that we're adding here is a list view. And the ID is going to be restaurants, and it's going to be holding the width is the fill the parent, height is wrapped, and the align parent to the top is true, which means it's going to be top aligned. when it starts out, and everything above it, it's going to be above IDs, so, or details, excuse me. Which we don't really have to worry about this line right now, but because it's a relative layout, we have something that could be aligned to the right, to the left, above or below other components, so other views, which is where this is layout underscore above. Means that it's going to show up above something else or below something else. We could probably pull that out just fine. The only thing they did different is they added a relative view to the outer layer of the table view. Mine didn't originally have that. I don't know if yours did either. I may have just cut and pasted just the table view in there. If you put it inside the relative view, then it gets all aligned correctly. If you don't put it in there, you got to take out this relative line right here. So, long story short, if we run it, we're not going to see anything in there. But we probably should make sure it works. Actually, we put it at the top. I'm sorry. We will see something. It'll be moved down to the bottom. So if you copy, yes, copy and paste, put this part in here. This is the new layout. If we build it, our application will run, and we'll see from the slide, from slide to the bottom will be an empty space at the top that's going to be holding the view. So adding a list to the top and sliding the form to the bottom. But we haven't done anything for the functionality yet. But we should be able to see the new view. So let me go ahead and run it just to verify that my input fields are dropped down and I have my list view above it. So let's take a look here. Yes, so now you see it's lowered. I don't have anything. I mean, even if I put something in, it doesn't, it's not really going to do anything. But above it, well, the view went away. But above it, we definitely, how do I get the keyboard away? Oh well, there we go. We have a little space where the list of items is going to show up. We all made it this far? Because I heard a little chatter on the right. Do we need more time for anything? Well, unless you holler up, I'm not going to know. Alright, so assuming we're all on the same page, this is a review for the most part. We haven't really done anything differently that we haven't done already in this course. So build and attach the adapter, which is the next part. So going through the model here, we have a list field, remain empty, of course, until we do something to it to populate it. So now we need to populate it. Since we have our array list, and our array list is restaurant type, we can easily wrap it to the array adapter. And this means that we're going to add a restaurant, and we need to add it to the array adapter via an add method. So we have to create the array adapter, add the methods to it, or excuse me, add the instances to it, and then put it into the list view. So otherwise we add it to the straight list view. The adapter will not know about the added restaurants, therefore it will not display it. So here's how we implement the class here. So now underneath it, we're going to add a new item here to create an array adapter. So array adapter, it's going to be called restaurants, and it's going to be called adapter. It's going to be equal to nil because we haven't created the object for it yet. So underneath, oops, let's close main activity. Go back to, excuse me, that was a, main activity XML file. So go back to main activity.java. Underneath where it says the list as being the model, paste in the adapter. So array adapter restaurant is going to be called adapter. It's going to be equal to null because we haven't created it yet. So you have to hover your mouse over array adapter and import array adapter. So we have a list of we have a list of restaurants we're going to add to the array adapter, take the array adapter and populate the list view. Seems like a roundabout way of doing it, but it's probably the most common actually. Keep in mind this is like fewer number of steps for iOS, by the way. Yeah? Very similar in concept. Used for different purposes, but very similar. It's almost the same thing. Oh, I think we have an attendance guy, so we will pause momentarily for attendance. Okay, so let's resume. I'm like, where were we now? We were adding the array adapter. So we're going to create an array adapter, and we're going to set it to null. then we're going to populate it in the Oncreate method. So we're going to create, I don't know if I did this yet, but copy the Arrayadapter restaurant and stick it in the, oh yeah, okay, I did that part already. Very good. I think that's as far as I got. And then in the Oncreate method, we're going to set the adapter equal to a new Arrayadapter restaurant, this Android layout simple list item 1 model. Well, we don't have that yet. We're going to create that. List.setAdapter to the adapter. So go ahead and copy, just take this for a second. We have to create parts of this that don't exist yet. So go ahead and stick this. Let me just make sure I'm on the right step here. Building and attaching the adapter. Very good. Implement the adapter. Hold on one second. Okay, very good. Okay. So let's see. In the Oncreate method, I'm going to put it on the bottom. My Oncreate. So right now I have the button. I've got the save on-click listener for the button. I've got that set. So I'm going to paste this in here, and I have the adapter. And let me just get rid of some of the spaces here. This also, it's on one line. Put this back up here. There we go. And then list.setAdapter. And I put my mouse over here, and I don't have list created. Let's just see what's going on with this. This is all of one. No. Okay, hold on one second. List view, list. Okay, I forgot this line here. All right, so list view. Let's create an instance of the list view locally because we need to get it from the list view that we added to the XML file. We need to get that and find view by ID on the list view, copy it to an item, call it list. So I'm going to add list view to my import list. Now list view list is going to be the restaurant's list view. The adapter, which was up here, the adapter here is going to be equal to the new, and this is just the generic Arrayadapter, which only gives us a label. In the next tutorial, we're going to add and we're going to make a custom Arrayadapter that's going to have a button and a label and some other stuff to it. But for right now, what we're doing is taking it, creating a new adapter. The adapter is going to be equal to the adapter restaurant. This Android r.layout simple list underscore item 1 model. And if we take a look here, we've added that in. Now, the on-click listener isn't going to do anything except for on the bottom we need to add the adapter. So adapter.addr, which is going to add the item to the adapter for us. So at the end of the case switch, so then on the switch, we're going to switch the which button did we check. At the end of that, we're going to copy and put in here, or you can just take, if it's easier for you, just copy the whole thing, stick it in there, or just take this one little guy on the end. I think it's just this one little guy at the end, actually. So at the bottom of the on-click listener, right underneath the switch, after this last one here, I'm going to stick this guy in here. Let's see if I have any luck. The adapter.addr. R is the on-click listener. Excuse me, R is the restaurant that was created in the on-click listener instance of the restaurant. So we click the add button, or the save button, excuse me. We take the edit text and we set r.setName, r.getSetAddress, r.setType, and then adapter.addr. So we're going to add it to the adapter. The adapter is adapter here, which is going to be equal to a new Arrayadapter that's going to be containing restaurants, and it's going to be using this generic simple list underscore item 1, and it's a data model that we're going to use. So where does this little guy come from? As the note says down in the bottom, the magic value Android R layout simple list underscore item underscore 1 is a stock layout for a list row. It's built into the API. I wonder if it's still going to exist though, because I'm using a 4.0. This is done on a 2.3. So we'll see what happens. Just displaying the text of the object to the white on a background with reasonable large font. Later tutorials, actually the next one, we're going to change the look of the rows. If you've added a few restaurants via the form, it should look like this. So now it's the big test. Let's see if it works with the current API. I believe because it didn't get an error message, it's still existence, but it's one of those hidden kind of features. Doesn't exist in the project, but it exists by definition. So let's take a look. I'm going to put a name. Let's call, oops. There we go. Mouse got stuck. Okay, I'm going to put the subways in here. And it's going to be down the street. Down the street. And it's definitely takeout. And I'm going to add it. And I got subways. So then I'm going to put in here, what's the other one? Chicago Pizza? Chicago Pizza. It's also down the street. Let's sit down. Let's go Fisher, sit down. Oh, okay, well. Subways. Uh-oh, there's Chicago Pizza. So I have to press escape here, get rid of my keyboard. Oh, I put it in twice. Yeah. Bummer. And I misspelled it. Pizzas. So, anyway, long story short, you should have working functionality. You don't have working functionality. We need to take a second and troubleshoot this because the next part you can't do unless you've got this one working. So it's worth it to take a pause right now. Okay, meanwhile, back at the ranch, we all have a working, hopefully we have a working program at this far. If not, I'll talk a little slower because some of you guys can catch up. Mine looks a little different than the screenshot, but it looks pretty good. Looks very similar. So moving right along, we're going to go into number 5. So we're seriously on page 70 already of this. So there's like about 15 different parts of this though. But now it's just where it starts actually getting a little bit interesting. So making our list be fancy. So what we just looked at a few minutes ago was an adapter, array adapter. It's the base class like activity, and we have different types of activities. So we're going to make a custom array adapter. Very common because array adapter is only showing the text. And it's from the toString method of our object that we're putting in there. If you want your text to look different, then change your toString. The text will look different. So in this tutorial, we're going to update the layout of our list view rows so that we have a name and address of the restaurant plus an icon indicating the type of restaurants. All right. So along the way, we need to create our own list adapter to handle the row view and the restaurant holder to populate a row from the restaurant. So regarding the notion of the adapters and list adapters, you can read this quote from the Busy Coder, yada yada. Basically, it's one of the best, well, this is the reason why people like Android actually. Everything's customizable. Not so customizable on iOS. So what we're going to do is take a basic adapter, turn it into a custom adapter, put a little icon on there, anything we want actually on there, which you can't do on other platforms. So Android's very, that's why, this is one of the reasons why people like Android. Unfortunately, what ends up happening though is you have to do it yourself. So it's a little manual, and we're going to see how this works. So step number 1, if you're lost so far, you can start out with number 4 of the list view. This is the file that I put on the bhacker.com website, the download file. But you can also click on here and get it from this link as well. So we're going to create a stub custom adapter. So first we're going to create this little stub. What is it? It's just going to be a blank, non-functioning, well, just a little class. We're going to make this a class hidden inside of a class. Not my style. I'd actually put it into a separate class. But I'm going to follow it this way because this is another style thing that I always like to put classes in separate files, but this one's going to hide it inside of the main activity class. So don't know if I would have done it this way, but let's just work with this way. So we're going to create a stub and we're going to implement it as a restaurant adapter. It's going to be an extension, so we're going to take restaurant adapter and it's going to extend array adapter. And then we'll use restaurant adapter instead of our array adapter. So we'll look at, so that will be where we put our logic for creating our own custom rows. So look at like this, the implementation as an inter class. So they're going to make it an inner class of lunch list, which is our main restaurant app. So go ahead and copy that here. I can't, for somehow reason, can't get it selected. I know I have to put an extra thing at the end. Because I'm going to put this inside of main activity.java. I'm not liking it. I'm going to stick it at the bottom of the file. And I have to change this here because it's not lunch list. It's called main activity. So I have to change lunch list to main activity. And did I spell activity correctly? And hold on one second. There we go. Whoops, now I need that one there. Let's get this nested correctly. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Let's. Let's just take a look here. We've got an opening and an opening, a closing and a closing. An opening and an opening, closing and a closing. And I want the closing to be the outer closing. And I want to put this inside of, where did I put this? I'm going to get rid of this. Don't need this.
There's one more closing.
There's one more closing. I left out a closing? I deleted. This is an inner class of the main class, so it has to go inside of the main class opening and closing brackets. I decided to stick it at the end, which was probably my problem. I should have just stuck it at the beginning of the file. So I've got an opening, a closing, and then this is the end of the outer class. So I like to put some spaces down here actually. There's again another formatting style. So what now we have is class that's declared inside of another class. They call it an inner class. And the class that we've got here belongs now. It's private to this class. We can't use it outside of the class. Which is why I would take this and create this as a separate class file. I'm not going to do it because the rest of the code is going to work with it as an inner class. I want to leave it alone for simplicity's sakes at this point. But restaurant adapter extends Arrayadapter, and the constructor restaurant adapter creates a super, we don't need the line there, with super, which is the main activity super, main activity.this, Android r.layout, simple list view layout model, which is this layout model that we got up here, the generic one that comes, the mystery model, the mystery layout that doesn't exist that we can use because it's part of the defined models of layouts that are available by default that we can use. So now we're going to use this one in every place where it says Arrayadapter. So I don't even have to look at this, but I will just to make sure I catch all the spots. So what we've done is we made I didn't call it lunch list, and it's not called lunch list, it's called main activity. But we stuck it in there, and now we got the hardwire in, which we've hardwired in this one. And we get our activity, the model from lunch itself. So we also need to change the adapter data member to be restaurant adapter, both where it's declared in the beginning and where it's instantiated in the Oncreate. So go ahead up here in the beginning, instead of Arrayadapter, I meant to copy this here, restaurant adapter, because I'm a terrible speller. I'm going to copy this. Every place where it says Arrayadapter, I'm going to use restaurant adapter. So up here at the top it says Arrayadapter. So this one's going to be restaurant adapter. And remove type arguments. Let's just make sure I don't need the type arguments. I don't need the type arguments because I'm not taking in the type arguments here. I've hard set the type arguments here. So I don't need the type arguments anymore. So, but I'm going to have a problem down here until I change it as well. So inside, okay, so in the outer main declaration, I've declared a restaurant adapter. I've already hard set the type of my array adapter that I'm extending to restaurants, or to restaurant, which is the data type, so I don't have to type it on the outside, which is what that message was. And if I read the tutorial, it would probably tell me to remove it. So in here, I'm going to do the same thing. So instead of creating a new array adapter, I'm going to take away array adapter. I'm going to remove the type any minute now as well. Put in restaurant adapter, and then remove the type. So now I have restaurant adapter. And let's just take a look down here. Let's take a look here. Remove, I don't need to march it that way either. Nope, this is all I'm going to need to do. All right. I probably could have stuck it all in one shot because well, it's okay. We'll put it out here. So in our in this instantiation, we have the restaurant adapter. Adapters are going to be equal to null. Make sure you've done this part. And then in the Oncreate, the adapter is going to be equal to a new restaurant adapter. We didn't have to tell it because down here we already told it that we were using simple list 1 as well. So we got to remove that part as well because we're going to do a create activity.this, and we're going to use this as the model for the interface on our restaurant adapter. Our constructor does it for us, and that's our constructor, although we didn't put the word public in front of it. That's the constructor. So if we got this far, then we're going to design the rows. So, and we want to design a row that incorporates 3 of our model elements. So we have the name, address, and the type instead of just the one text string that's the default value from the toString method. So for this, we're going to use 3 icons, one for the specific type, sit down, take out, or delivery. And we can use whatever icons you wish, or you can download the full icon set with a tutorial zip file. If I click on that download button, do I have the icons? I probably have the icons. Let me go search for the icons, actually. When I clicked on that, I got sent out of this tutorial. So hold on a second. Let me go back to the tutorial. Uno momento. Back where I was before I clicked on that. Let's see. We need 3 icons. Well, we know how to do icons. So let's just find 3 icons and drag them into the folder. We don't have to use the 3 icons that came with this. So let me see. Let me bring up Firefox for a second here. Going to Google. Let's see. I'm going to call it, I'll just go in here, restaurant. Restaurants. Images. Oh, that's not what I want. Actually, this might work. Wow. Icons? Oh, no. Okay, someone have any ingenious idea what to search on? I need to get 3 icons from something. I'll put here food. Food images. Huh? Say that one more time. What? Yeah, spoon. Restaurant icons. Seriously? These look pretty good. Thank you. Oh my god, this is not supposed to be the hardest part of the tutorial. I'm just gonna, you know what? This is good here. I'm just gonna, oh man, I just want some free stuff. Hold on one second. Let me just pull something I can find. Here, this looks pretty good. Here we go. I'm gonna save this one as a 1. It's JPEG though. That's right. Let's see. This one looks like home. Save image as home. Or I'll just call this one 2. Find 3 icons if you can. Oh, this one looks pretty good. Save icon is 3. Oh, here's a PNG. I think the PNGs actually look better, so I'm going to try and get a couple more PNGs. Oh, this looks good. because of lack of creativity, I'm calling them 1 PNG, 2 PNG, and 3 PNG. Find 3 images. If you want, you could download them from the. Here, this is going to be 3. There you go. Oh, I already have 3. Oh no. Okay, hold on a second. Let me just take a look at what I got so far. I got 2, 3. Oh, I'll just name this one 1. Here we go. Oh, wait a minute. 1. So. I need a 2. Looks like. So I'll save. 2. Anybody want these images? You guys got your own? Okay, so otherwise that download file probably has some in there as well. So drag these into the drawable folder. We know how to do that from previous tutorials. Let me just make sure this one is the correct file type. Get information. Where is it? Here it is. Stuck over here. Hide extension. No. Okay. So I have a 1, 2, and a 3. One of them looks like home. The other one looks like eat there, and I don't know what the other one is. Maybe takeout. So, actually, inside of okay, here's another problem. I don't like all these other ones. I'm just going to create a drawable folder. So I'm going to go File, New, Folder, and I'm going to call mine Drawable. That way I don't have to worry about which one. It's got the icons in it. So, besides, it doesn't really matter. You could just add it to the top one if you wanted to as well. So copy the files in. I just called mine 1, 2, and 3. Although I probably should have called it take home. You know, I don't know what the other ones were. Eat in, take home, whatever. Yeah, if you wanted to create, you don't have to create another folder, but you can if you want to. Are we good? Or do we need more time to find icons? I'm going to assume we're okay. Okay. Nah, we'll take a slight little break after this is done, so for people to catch up. So, I guess we could have called them, oh, this was balls? Oh, no. Oh, well, it doesn't really matter. We're going to use these other icons. So, all right, so this was a red ball, yellow ball, green ball, whatever. All right, so, oh yeah, okay. Well, we're going to have different icons. All right, so the general layout is going to look like this with the icon. So we're going to have an icon on the left, and then we're going to have the name of the stacked on top of the address on the right-hand side. So to achieve this look, we're going to use a nested pair of linear layouts, which is very similar to what we did before in terms of one of our list views. We're going to use the list view. We're going to stick another layout inside of the list view that's going to have an icon with 2 text fields or text views next to it. So we're going to use this one here for row. So we're going to create a new one. We're going to call it row.xml. It's going to be a new layout. So go ahead and go into your Xcode project. You can find it somewhere here. Now instead of drawable, I'm going to click inside of layouts. And in the layout folder, I'm going to highlight the layout folder and then go File, New, Other. Because I want to create an XML layout file, I'm going to select Android XML layout file. And select Next. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to leave it on linear, but it doesn't really matter what I call it. But what type, because I'm going to replace the root element anyway in a few minutes. You could put it on relative or whatever. Leave it on layout. I'm going to call this one row, R-O-W. Clicked Finish. Now I have row.xml, which is a new XML file. And in here, I'm going to take this down here and put it, copy and paste it, and stick it inside of my row.xml file. Oh, it is using a linear. Okay. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to highlight everything in there, take everything out of here, and push this in here. And now I have my row, and I'm going to save it just to make sure there's no errors in it. And there are no errors, which is very good. I'm going to save this one here. Good. So in my image view, I'm going to see what is this accessible missing content descriptor. It doesn't matter, actually. It doesn't matter. We just don't have the icons in here. We're going to set them programmatically. So I wonder if I could see this one. No, I can't see it. But this should look like this picture here when we're all done with it, where we have an image with 2 text fields. So we have an image view, and then we have 2 text views to the right of it. And this was done in a linear layout, so they're going to word wrap, essentially. So once we have that set, hopefully you guys have that set. So we're going to use XML as a basis for now we have row.xml, and it's inside of, make sure you put it inside a layout, which is where I put it. Some of the unusual attributes applied to this layout include the padding, the text file. You can go ahead and read through this on your own. These are different attributes that are put on the components for the image, for the Eclipse size and stuff. So step number 3, we're going to override the get view the simple way. And is there going to be a simple way? There is a simple way. The get view returns the view from the layout component. So to override it, we're going to stick this in here, view get view. We're going to stick it in underneath the restaurant adapter. So we're going to modify restaurant adapter underneath the what do you call it? The constructor for the restaurant adapter. We're going to stick in the overrided method. And then on the get view, that's going to bring in our image view and our row. So let me read the rest of it here. So we're going to need to use this layout ourselves in the restaurant adapter. So we need to override get view and inflate the layout as needed for the rows. So modify restaurant adapter to look like this. So I'm going to kind of take the easy way out. I'm going to copy the entire restaurant adapter and replace it. So go into, I'm going to close row.xml. I'm going to go back up to, and we're still in main activity. So to make my life easier, I'm going to put a lot of spaces here between the opening and the closing. Because I'm just going to replace restaurant adapter because it's easier than adding the code, because this is just a little bit and what I'm going to add is a lot. So I took out restaurant adapter and I pasted in the first screen. I have to finish the rest of the screen. So all this stuff's going to be read for a few minutes here to finish out the implementation of that class. Alright, so let's see, I have to change lunch list now back to main activity again because I replaced what I had there before, which is not that big of a deal. So I have to import the view group, so import view group, and then I have to import the layout inflator. So import layout inflator. And let's see, we're going to need to import text view.
Sir,
Yes?
Command Shift O will add all the missing imports.
Command Shift what? Command Shift O. Oh, thank you. Command Shift O. Where did you see that? Where did you find that?
I used to use, you can, if you click on that navigator source, there also you find all the commands.
I know, but that's a lot of investment into an IDE. I'm not really willing to make that commitment. Remind me next time. I know I learned, you guys taught me the Command Shift F for format, and Command Shift O. What does the O stand for? F stands for format. O, import objects. I don't know. Thank you. All right, so naturally we don't have red ball, yellow ball, green ball. We have 1, 2, and 3. So unless you called it red ball, yellow ball, whatever, I'm just going to put here 1. And over here, let's see, drawable 1. Well, let's see. Is it not going to like my number system? Let's just take a look. Let me save. Let's do it this way. Refactor it. Let me rename it, actually. 1. It doesn't like my numbers. So I'm now changing it to 1, 2, and 3. You know, I don't know why it doesn't like my numbers, really. Let's see. I'm doing it by renaming it. So keep the PNG on there, but change it to text instead of numeric values. Doesn't like my drawable either. Let's take a look here. Set image resource r.drawable. Did I misspell drawable? Let's just do this then. Always save all modifications and resources automatically prior to refactoring. Oh, I don't know. Let's just do this. Alright, so it didn't like my numbers, so I changed them to characters. It didn't like drawable, so I put them into the first directory, drawable-hdpi. I know I've used drawable on its own before and it works just fine. I know I've used numbers before and it worked good for you. Okay, so if it's not working for you, those are some of the tricks you might be able to do. It's r.java that really needed to be updated that wasn't getting updated. I probably could close the project, brought it back up.
So how did you refresh the R?
I didn't. Instead, I just dragged it into a folder that already existed and I changed the numbers to characters. I don't know why I probably didn't have to do that at all, actually. If you go into project and you go into clean, I believe clean will actually refresh and recreate the r.java file for you automatically. Let me pause for a second. Okie So we're still hanging in there. We're almost done. Don't worry. So let's see. We've put in, and now we've changed the images to 1, 2, and 3 on mine. You have to change the images to whatever it is you called yours. Let's go back to the instructions now. So let's see. Notice that we've created a row only if needed, recycling existing rows. But we can still pick out each one of the text views and images, so each one of the rows to populate it for the restaurant app, for the indicated position. So step number 4, create the restaurant holder. So to improve the performance, encapsulation, basically, we're going to need to move the logic that populates a row from the restaurant into a separate class, one that can be cached, one that can cache the text view and the image view widgets. So to do this, we want to add the following static another inner class. Another inner class we're going to add called the restaurant holder. That's going to put everything. Okay, the restaurant holder is going to put everything together for us and stick everything inside of the list views instead of doing it manually, which is the way we're doing it now. So if we do it this way, it's a little bit more efficient because all of the information gets cached by the adapter, and when we traverse through each one of the rows, it just holds up an encapsulated object instead of all of 3 different components. So it loads faster, executes faster in terms of the addition or into the navigation part of it as well. improves performance actually, which is why we're doing this. So we don't necessarily have to do this way. We can just leave it alone and just add all those components separately like we're doing right now, but it's better to do it this way. So again, we need to copy and move over, put it at the bottom. I'm going to put it at the bottom. It doesn't really matter where you put it. We're going to add an inner class called restaurant holder. So then we're going to have to change the wait a minute, 1 second here for a second. We're going to need to change the images. Let me just see something real quick here. Restaurant adapter. Why did we do that step? Okay. I'll just follow along. I'll humor this for a second here. So let's go ahead and put in the new inner class restaurant holder. I'm going to put a big space in between that opening, closing, before that ending bracket for the class. And I know I'm going to get some error messages here for a second until I finish the rest of the paste. I'm going to take this code here and stick it in, finish it off. Okay. Now I'm going to need to change my images now to 1, 2, and 3 again. 1, 2, and 3. This is like, what is it, cat in a hat? Thing 1, 2, and 3. Oops, thing. I put thing in there. 2, 3. Okay, I can only think in one direction at a time, obviously. Alright, so let me go back to Android. Like, I was thinking, like, you know, thing 1, thing 2, thing 3. Anyway, alright.
You could just rename your images.
I know. I put thing instead of 3 in there, which is why I said that. Alright, so now we have this inner class that we added to it. It's called restaurant holder. Okay, so we have restaurant holder takes a text view, and an image view, plus it takes a view for the row, and then creates a restaurant holder row view where we've got. Let me just do it this way. There we go. I put in my Command-Shift-F to format it correctly. Otherwise, I was doing it manually. Returns the constructor. The restaurant holder constructor creates a row, puts the row in. Oops, how come that Control-Shift didn't do it this way? Didn't work for me. Okay, there we go. I thought it was going to fix it up for me. The constructor takes and creates a name, an address, and an icon row, and then we can populate it from restaurant.r. Whoops, let me just put the rest of these guys, line returns, in here too. There we go. If the type is going to be equal to sit down, then it's going to set the icon to 1. Else, if the type is takeout, it sets it to 2. Else, if the type is whatever it happens to be, is going to be 3, whatever happens at the end. So it basically combines all 3 parts, puts it together, puts it in a row. Then we're going to take the row and add it to the adapters. So we have the row that's going to go inside of the list view. So let's take a look here. We're going to recycle the rows via the restaurant holder. This is the restaurant holder. So to take advantage of the new restaurant holder, we need to modify the code in the get view. That's why I'm like, why did we do that if we're going to go modify it? But that's why I said I'm going to humor this for a second. We put code in, we didn't need that. We're going to take it out. We're going to put new code into it. It's okay. The guy put a lot of work into this, and it was a very good demonstration, although we didn't run it. I guess we could have run it, but we didn't attach it yet, so I'm not going to criticize. I'm just going to work with this. It's a good learning experience, I guess. But to take advantage of the new restaurant holder, we're going to modify the get view in the restaurant adapter. So following the holder pattern, we need to create a restaurant holder. Then when we inflate the new row, cache the wrapper in the row via the set tag, and then get it back later via the get tag. So the set tag, get tag. So change the get view to look like the following. We can probably just take the whole restaurant adapter out, is what I'm thinking. So let's replace the restaurant adapter because most of it is the get view. We're going to have to change lunch list back to main activity. So one more time with this one. So I'm going to put a big old space here so I don't take out too much. And this is the restaurant adapter. So we're going to take it out one more time because we're changing the get view. And Control-Shift-F. Hey, that time it worked. Now you have to change lunch list again if you did this again to main activity. Oh, I have to change the activity. So now I have the revised get view that's using the restaurant holder instead of the restaurant, instead of each one of them individually. So I did not go over the get view, but on that light, the get view was taking the two text views and the image and loading them in. Now instead of loading them in this way, we're loading them in through the restaurant holder. So we're going to put that in there instead. We just put the pieces together rather than doing them manually or separately. So, okay, so moving right along, this means that the whole class looks like this. Well, I'm gonna assume my class is working. If your class has got problems, you could copy and paste this class into it. I'm gonna leave mine alone because I think mine's probably working just fine. So rebuild and run and see what happens. So this will be the fun part here. Note that the experiencing a problem where your edit text widgets shrink, failing to follow the sketching rules. Well, there's a bug in Android. It will hopefully be repaired one day. Well, let's just take a look and see what happens. See if we experience that bug. I don't think we're going to. Oops, hold on one second. Let's see. I'm going to call this Subways. And it's going to be at 1, 2, 3 down the street. And it's going to be takeout. And I'm going to press save. So I got my takeout icon. Now this looks pretty good. Takeout Subways 1, 2, 3 down the street. So then I'm going to put here pizza. And this one's going to be 1, 2, 3 down the street. But this one's going to be sit down. And I got to sit down. Oh, I hit it twice because I didn't see it. So now I probably have it in here 3 times. There we go. Yeah. So let's try another one here. I want to do the delivery to make sure my delivery is working. So now I'm going to put in here Pizza Hut. And this is going to be... oops. Yes. Let's put in here 2 blocks away. 2 blocks away. And this is going to be delivery. So now if I press the escape button, I see I've got delivery. This is the bug, actually, the spacing. We're going to tweak this in another tutorial, which we're probably not going to do today. But because I'm looking at the time right now, and most people are pretty exhausted at this point. We can see if we get this functionality, we're doing all right. We want to get the icons in here along with the 2 texts, the text on the top, text on the bottom. And if we got that far, I think we're doing pretty good, actually. Now, according to the bug here, which I think has later been fixed, actually. This may not necessarily be an issue that we have to worry about. But noting that edit text widgets shrink. No, this is a different bug. Failing to follow the stretch columns rule. I don't know if we're really having that problem right now, actually. That problem is doing the alignment, because if we take a look at what's going on with our thing, I believe this is an interesting stretch issue, so it might actually be associated with that bug, might be something else. So what we're going to do in the next couple of tutorials, just to give you a heads up, is when you press on something to have the event trigger something like to call or to add to an address book or something. And in the next one, we're actually going to put a grid in here. Sorry, excuse me, tabs. We've seen the tabs, but we'll create 2 more tabs in this, actually. So let me take a look here. to see if we want to continue a little bit further. We're pretty much done with number 5. Number 6 is splitting the tabs, which is actually not so bad. Reworking the layout. So we have 2 tabs. And let me just take a quick look here, actually. Wiring the tabs. That's what we're adding next. So we have the 2 tabs, one with the list and one with the details, because some of you are actually having the problem right now in which this screen's too big and you can't see the list at the top. And so the finished, when you click on the details, you'll be able to add one in. When you click on the list, you see the list. Do we want to do that today, or did we have enough for today? Because we're at a kind of a decision time of the day. How many people want to continue forward and split it into 2 separate tabs? We got quiet all of a sudden. How many people want to continue troubleshooting the problems you're having? How many people are still having problems? All right, maybe we should stop because next week you want a working app because we're going to take the tabs and go forward. So let me just give you, okay, so we won't start the tabs today because I won't be able to finish them actually. I'm thinking I probably won't be able to finish them. So what we're going to do next week is do the tab part. If you want to look ahead, I would recommend that. Then we'll add the messages with menus. So next week, yoo-hoo, we're still here. Not you. We're still here this week. If I could have somebody at least be quiet. I only have like 5-10 minutes left here. Hello. All right. Next week, we're going to finish it all the way up to about the midpoint here. So we're going to do, we actually went through 4 tutorials, well, 6 tutorials today. Next, 5? Okay, that's right, we skipped number 1. So next week, we're going to go through another 5, which is going to build on the same app. So we add we're going to add the tabs to it, which is not too bad. Set the menus, so the context menu. Set background images. We are not going to do the lifetimes because we've done that one actually. But we'll add some lifecycle lifetimes to it. Look at using a restaurant store. So we're going to connect it to a database and store the restaurant entries into an SQLite database. So if you're still stuck with how to do that, we will definitely do that one. We're going to connect it to an internet. And we're going to do an API that's similar to Tweeter, to tweet people if you have an account that we went to this restaurant, yada yada. We're going to send out using the content manager, review all that stuff, and then eventually we're going to look at the maps as well, but you don't need an account for this. We're going to use the older API. We're going to use the older view on that one. Posting locations, stuff like that. Bringing it into a little tip calculator, searching for food, which is the internet part of it, and basically wind it out with a few more content providers and a few more internet resources. So we got a lot of ways to go in this, but we have, as I was mentioning before, 4 weeks left. So everything we did today is on the final exam. What I mean is the contents of how to create an XML file, how to create a data, the model view controller concept, all of the different things I keep talking about are stuff I'm trying to review for you. So as I mentioned before in the beginning, this is twofold. It's final exam review and capstone projects / more practice. Questions, comments, or concerns? Now that we're all quiet. You don't want to do the, nobody wants to do the next part? Okay, we'll do it next week. All right, so I'm going to hang out a little bit longer and help people. If you don't have your app working, I want you to get your app working if you're going to do this, because next week we're going to continue forward. If you want to look ahead, you can build it all the way to the end if you want. We're going to actually get through it. We're actually on... We're pretty good, actually. We made some pretty good progress today. There was only one more tutorial I was hoping to get through, but we'll get through it next time. So, all right, that's all for today.